Welcome to Profiles in Risk. This is your host, Tony Cañas, and today we're recording episode 224, 225. I'm not entirely sure, but I've been doing this for a while. And today I have with me Kevin Bracken, Head of Growth at Briza. I don't know if I pronounced either your name or the company correctly, but how's it going today, Kevin?
It's going great. It's going great. It's good to be here. It's raining in Nevada, which is not typical, but it happens from time to time.
Well, I'm glad you had some time to join me after doing the rain dance to bring the rain. So I'm sure that it was deeply needed. So what we always do is we first give you the chance to kind of give the elevator pitch. What exactly is Briza?
Sure. So Briza is two things, and really people's experience of Briza is it falls into what they do. But essentially, we are a small commercial API that democratizes access to commercial insurance APIs. Our aim is to take carriers' APIs and then to deliver to our various constituents a streamlined single application, and then deliver multiple quotes, and then enable for instant quoting, binding, and payment collection. But the way that most people experience Briza today is probably through our Briza Smart Portal. So that allows agents or their clients to experience a digital storefront where they can instantly get quotes and bind and pay online in sometimes as little as 5 minutes.
Okay, there's a lot there in the pitch.
Yeah,
okay.
There is.
So small commercial API. So what I found really interesting in what you were saying is that you have the word API twice, at the beginning and at the end. Yeah, so I think most of our listeners probably do understand what an API is, right? An application programming interface, the way that two separate systems can securely and quickly talk to each other. Most carriers, in my experience, are not yet API ready, right? They've got the old IBM machines with the hamster running, and and they're hard to interface with, right. Especially on the commercial line side. In small commercial, API absolutely makes so much sense because small commercial is all about speed, right? Mm-hmm. So where you lost me a little bit, or where I'd love to learn more, is so your Briza is connecting into, let's say, Hiscox API,
mm-hmm. Right?
And then on the other end, it's giving API access to agents to interact with Hiscox API. Am I correct in that?
That is definitely a big part of what we do. Absolutely.
Okay.
And so if you consider, if you consider, you are a small business owner trying to get insurance. I think everyone is sort of familiar with the sort of, an insurance agent website often has a get quotes button, but as well as I that you're not going to get quotes when you click on that button. You're going to get a form. And so you fill out the form, you may get a call back from an agent, and they will then send you either a Google form or a PDF, and then you'll, fill in maybe multiple PDFs, send it back to the agent. Then what they do is they tend to log into multiple carrier portals. They submit your application. There might be additional questions they didn't ask you when they initially sent you this PDF, so they might have to call you back and say, hey, actually, like, what portion of this building do you rent, and what's your building made of, and all those fun underwriting questions. And then what happens next is they produce a proposal. They send the proposal back to you, small business owner. And then, at that point, you may just flake because it's been at least 5 hours of work of the agent's time. And for you as a small business owner, potentially a week or two could have passed. And so that's what really we solve with the Briza Smart Portal. And I like to bring it up because it's an example of a really sort of easy to understand insurance transaction that we make super easy. So we can help the agent do this in 5 minutes or less sometimes. And so the client can go in and fill in their own digital application and never have to talk to the agent. Then the agent just has to focus on servicing, or they can always be there to pick up the phone if the client has any questions. But that is actually a really small part of what we do. Like, the big part of what we do is we take back all of the data and the lack of standardization and all of the, it could come as a cord XML, or it could come as XML, or it could come as JSON from the carriers. And some of them are, still running on mainframe technology and programming in COBOL. Not a lot, but they're out there. But what they deliver to us, there is no standardization. And that is why we exist, because we intend to be a unified API that standardizes all the various formats that we're getting back from all the carriers, unifying their question sets, unifying classes of business, and mapping, sort of all this disparate data to produce a single streamlined application. But the purpose is not just to make it easier for people to buy small insurance through these digital storefronts. Our aim is also to deliver it to anyone who wants to enable commercial insurance transactions within their apps. And so it could be, payroll, bookkeeping, banking, anything you can think of really that services small business.
You can just embed.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay. So what makes me think of, once you explain more of what you're doing internally, are you guys kind of the modern Accord? what Accord should have been?
I mean, it's funny you say that, because I think we have accepted that Accord will be part of the industry for a very long time. But sometimes some people that do use our platform say, I really like your platform because it seems like I have to view fewer Accord forms. But that is not to cast aspersion on what Accord has built. And, we definitely wouldn't be where we are today without them. But we like to see ourselves more of a, at the end of the day, the person that we're always thinking about is the developer. So we really like to see ourselves as more of like a Stripe type platform.
Okay.
So everything that we're building is with the developer in mind, with the person who is going to be integrating our API down the road. So the reason that we're doing all the hard work of integrating all these carrier APIs is because we have the developer in mind who's going to use our API, which is why our sort of like, little cutesy internal developer tagline is making insurance delightful. And we don't see insurance APIs as being delightful today, but just like Stripe sort of took all these sort of, disparate banking systems and made it actually a real pleasure to accept credit cards through an API.
So we take Stripe at Insurance Nerds for our books and speaking and stuff. It was super easy to install on WordPress. Exactly. I had no idea that's why Stripe had done well, because it was they basically made it easy to interface with all the payment takers. That is super interesting.
And really, like, one of the most interesting things that Stripe did in the early days was they produced a ton of content that was solely marketed at developers. They didn't care about the business guys. They didn't care about the people in the suits. They really just said, we want to think about the developers, so that when the business guys tell the developers, hey, go figure out how to accept credit cards, the developers are like, I love those Stripe guys because they get me. They are going to make my life easier. I really think that the way that they have documented this API is very logical and straightforward. And so we take a similar approach. We're always thinking about the developer who is going to have to deal with our API documentation. We want to make it super easy for them, so that when it comes time for, imagine an app that pairs contractors with people who need contractors, and these contractors say, I need insurance. And the biz guys say, developers, go figure out how to enable instant commercial insurance transactions in our app. They think of Briza first.
Makes perfect sense. I happen to have, I'm a failed computer science major.
Great, love
it. And I ended up graduating with management information systems major. I just never worked in IT, but I at least understand kind of what you guys do. And that does make a lot of sense. If I for a long time I was the IT person for Insurance Nerds. That's why our website is a gigantic mess. But yeah, if given the number of carriers that are out there, if I'm the developer at a broker, or if I'm the developer at a broker at MGA or at whatever company that part of what they do is selling insurance, I would much rather interface with a single API that's well designed and well documented than having to figure out how to pipe into each and every carrier. So that makes a lot of sense. So early, the first thing we were talking about, the application piece. Okay, so the application piece. Let me see if I got it correctly. So if I am if I have a commercial brokerage and I have multiple carriers, right? And somebody goes to my website, puts in a application,
Mhm.
uh, through you guys, I can go ahead and immediately get them quoted with CNA, Crum & Foster, Markel, Hiscox, and employers.
That's right.
I don't know
That's
what
right.
I see coalition listed, but I don't think they're a PNC carrier.
The
There might
coalition is
be.
they do cyber liability.
Oh, okay, perfect, perfect. So
Yeah.
they're cyber specialists. I wonder where they're headquartered out. Because I should know
Yes,
that.
they're so I met the coalition folks in San Francisco,
Oh,
and
okay. That makes sense.
and At Bay is also in San Francisco. We're going to work with At
Okay,
Bay in the future.
it is rare for me to run into a PNC carrier that I don't know. That makes sense.
Yeah.
San Francisco is
They're a
not part
really
of my
awesome bunch
territory.
of people. Philosophically, we are
Mhm.
really aligned with Coalition, and their
Okay.
aim is always about making fewer questions, simplifying the
Oh,
application,
beautiful.
and yeah,
Beautiful.
they have a really bunch of innovative ways of doing it. So we're
Okay.
really excited to work with them.
So if I have a few of those carriers, and then I
Mhm.
have a few other carriers, right? I also have the Liberty, and I have Travelers, and I have a
Mhm.
Nationwide now that they're independent or whatever. I have a few other carriers.
Mhm.
So the application comes in.
Mhm.
Uh, it can quote and bind for those carriers that you guys already connected with.
Right.
What about the ones that you're not yet, like the Liberty
Sure.
mutuals?
So Liberty is we're working on Liberty. Liberty will be it's in testing and it should be launched pretty soon. And
Excellent.
we have a whole bunch of carriers that are also in the pipeline
Oh,
right
excellent.
now. So we think of everything in terms of number of integrations. We've currently completed 8 integrations, and we have a couple dozen in the pipeline. And so by the time all these integrations are done, I think there should be at least 3 dozen of them done. So one integration is one product and one carrier, basically. So that means that would be like BOP on Hiscox is one integration, and you need to for every single product you need to do a whole new integration. And so if you were in the process of integrating something for your own application, for Hiscox, you would need to do the BOP integration and then the GL integration and then the E&O integration if you are not relying on Briza or to deliver a unified API. So but I think the important question, I think, beyond what about the carriers we don't work with, and we hope to eventually get thousands of carriers on Briza, but also the agents that don't have direct appointments, we can sub-appoint. And so
Also,
if
you're also an MGA.
We are. We don't really like to think of ourselves as one, though. We really like to think of ourselves as a software vendor. But in order to do the things that we do have to sub-appoint some people. So if you are directly appointed with Briza, with one of these carriers, then you can sell their products through Briza, and they will instantly populate in your various carrier dashboards as well. And then if you're not, then we will sub-appoint, giving you instant market access to every API that we have available, without having to go through a new process every time. And then in that case, instead of relying on the existing commission schedule that agent has with the carrier, you just use our commission schedule, and they tend to be fairly competitive versus some wholesalers out there, because we just deliver a lot of efficiency.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. I like that. I think there's a lot of young agencies out there that don't have all the appointments they need, and they're always confused on okay, until I grow big enough to be able to feed my own appointments. Who do I go through?
Mm-hmm.
There's a million options.
Totally.
I haven't heard.
And we can help them with that as well. And we really are totally agnostic about whether they're directly appointed, whether they're sub-appointed. We don't care as long as they are happy and they're selling policies.
Fantastic. Before we started recording, before we go into that, let me ask you. So we always like to learn, how did the idea for Briza come along?
Sure. So Briza was started by our CEO Ben and our chair Mike. And so Ben has been in the insurance industry for 20 years. He has worked at Chubb and Markel and AIG at the SVP level for 2 decades. Mike is the executive chairman and now former CEO of FreshBooks.com. And FreshBooks is the I guess it's the second largest. No, it is the number one small business bookkeeping app.
Hmm.
Um, and just in the whole bookkeeping space, it's number two only to TurboTax, right? So yeah, Ben and Mike, I believe they were in Bermuda, and over some glasses of wine, they decided, they're like, we really need to do something about commercial insurance. It is extraordinarily complex for people to get coverage, and we believe that a unified API in the agency and carrier and wholesaler space will eventually enable people to purchase commercial insurance through any place they would want to that involves small businesses. And if you think about a company like FreshBooks, right? FreshBooks has data on millions of users, right, who are all small business owners, and they need insurance, right? But if you think about it, imagine that they went through all the trouble, and actually this is something that happened with TurboTax. Imagine they went through all the trouble of integrating an insurance carrier API, right? They get developers on it, they get the documentation back, they design their own workflows inside of their app, and then they go to run a quote, and then the carrier only has appetite for like maybe 15% of the
Yeah,
application.
and you did all the
Right?
work, and now you have one carrier.
Exactly. And so this is something that not even every carrier understands, is that even if they have built an API, that is just the beginning of the hard work. So it's like, so what? Now you've built an API, but now you have to distribute it, and the distribution of it is very difficult. Not only do you need to manage potentially thousands of developer relationships, even one of your partners goes through all the hard work of integrating your API, they're only going to get quotes like less than 50% of the time at best, and sometimes less than 10%. And that is obviously not going to lead to satisfied insureds at the end of the day. And so really only a unified API is able to deliver the type of coverage that is necessary to enable instantly bindable insurance transactions across the entire SMB platform space.
I'm a big believer that the insurtechs that will be successful are the ones that follow the Abel Travis rule. Right? They have both the insure and the tech part of the insurtech word. So
Right.
it's great to hear that you've got that you've got some serious insurance people in the founding team that actually recognize the problem. There's a lot of insurtechs that are a cool tech toy trying to find that insurance problem, right? Like tech hammer looking for an insurance problem. But yeah, that makes absolutely perfect sense. Thank you. Before we start recording, you mentioned that you guys are big when it comes to neutrality of the API.
Mm-hmm.
So tell me more about that.
Yeah, sure. So when we look at the sort of M&A activity that is happening in the insurtech world, one, it's really exciting. A lot of people are getting acquired, and there's a lot of mergers happening, and it seems like the market is really hot. But one thing that I would say concerns us is that we see that over time, the tendency is to be using technology to simply enhance the position of the entrenched players in the market, whether that would be carriers or particularly large brokerages. Now, when a large brokerage acquires an insurtech, what tends to happen is it creates or exacerbates this problem that we call the sort of the walled garden syndrome. What it does not do is it does not use technology to democratize access to the carriers, to the insurance products, and ultimately we believe it hurts the health of the game. And so if you think about the insurance industry as a whole, as a sort of game, we always want the health of the game to be improved. And we always want the space to get larger, and we always want the pond that everyone is playing in to get larger, because it is going to make things better for everyone. And that is why we are very big on neutrality. And so when it comes to neutrality, it's not just something that we say. The aim here is that we, at the end of the day, the people that we're focused on, obviously we have a tremendous amount of respect for our carrier partners and our broker partners. But the people that we're thinking about at the end of the day are the developers. So we are always thinking about developers the developer experience and really making insurance delightful. That really is our mission when it comes to improving the lives of developers and sort of the industry as a whole. So, when we talk about neutrality, we do not have investors that are large brokerages. We do not have investors that are insurers. And when it comes to our aim for building Briza, we take a multi-decade approach to thinking about it. We want to be around for a very long time, and we are blessed to have investors that are with us and aligned in that vision on this journey. And so we intend to continue being neutral. We do not intend to, we do not intend to only focus on enhancing the tools of a particular brokerage. Our aim is to have loyalty to the developers at the end of the day.
Okay, so for that long term, to be able to think multi-decade, it becomes very hard to IPO.
That's true. That's true.
Right now, not impossible, right? Like Berkshire Hathaway is a perfect example, publicly traded company, and they've managed to always manage it for the very, very long term by telling the stockholders that.
Yeah, I mean, I would say entering the public market is it's a great thing, and obviously it can help in a company's growth. I think the thing that we're not really focused on is like flipping the company to some acquirer next year. We believe that is like the surest way to see the vision killed. And so whether we enter the public market or not in the future, I think that is not antithetical to our goal of sort of building the infrastructure for the next generation of insurance APIs.
Yeah, I totally get what you say when it comes to being acquired. So I call that the Saturn Effect.
Right.
I'm just old enough to remember. Some of our younger listeners probably don't, but some of our older listeners who are actually leaders in their companies probably do remember Saturn. But basically the whole idea was the little car company that will change GM, right? And 20 years later, it's just become one of the GM brands, and 30 years later, it literally disappears, and GM continues to be GM. It's very well. Or with insurance, I get Insurance. I guess could be a great example, right? They get acquired by Allstate. And little by little, they become more Allstate rather than the innovative player that they used to be. Tell me a little bit about the revenue model. So who pays Briza? Is it the carrier? Is it the broker?
Sure. So yeah, I mean, Briza is. Briza mostly focuses on, today we want to focus mostly on volume. So the way that we get paid is if you're directly appointed by the carrier. So right now I'm just talking about an agency specifically. We have custom the deal is custom when it comes to like an AMS or like a SaaS partner. But if you're strictly talking about an independent insurance agency, our fee is 1%. So if you're directly appointed, let's say you're directly appointed by Liberty and you're getting 15% from Liberty commission, then you write a Liberty policy through Briza, then you get 14%. So we charge 1% of the gross written premium, right? If you're talking about if we are sub-appointing, then we have a commission schedule with each individual carrier that we remit to the agent, but in general, we're still taking 1%. So that is our business model. We optimize for volume. We're not trying to charge people, $2,000 to set it up. We really just want, and we also know that today, before we get through those 36 integrations, we cannot be all things to all people. So what we want people to think of us as is today we are a very fast and efficient tool in their insurance toolkit.
There are players out there doing somewhat similar things that once they got busy I don't know if they still are charging 50 grand to join the group.
The important
so that's
thing
pretty awesome.
The important thing to keep in mind, I mean, yes, obviously we're it is cheap if you don't have to pay to set it up, but I also want to point out that there's a lot of companies out there that what they are making is they are making essentially just like a next generation commercial rater. That is not what we want to do, and that is not where you really ought to be thinking about what Briza does. Like that is just one application on top of the API, and there could be thousands of applications built on top of the API. We have built that API. It's called the Briza Smart Portal, and that would be sort of our like next generation commercial rater. We aspire to build so much more than just a fancy broker tool that lets you get a bunch of quotes and sell a policy.
Okay, so for the listeners on the carrier side, and my heart is on the carrier side. I worked my entire career on the carrier side. So if I am, the CIO or the head of commercial lines at, let's say, a regional or a super regional carrier, and I'd really love to create the partnership. How does it work? How much does it cost me to join? Kind of how does the relationship with the carriers work?
Sure. So the relationship with the carriers, we want to make it as easy as possible for the carriers. Really, the only thing we need from a carrier is their API documentation. And so after that, what we do is a whole bunch of heavy lifting on our end. It is a lengthy process of streamlining and mapping the application questions, mapping the classes of business to other carriers, class of business mapping, and then a whole bunch of sort of black boxy stuff that is really what Briza does, right? That is really the core of what we do. And so after that, I mean, we generally start testing between 1 to 2 months after we get the API documentation. And then we work with the carriers team, and the carriers also, across carriers, they tend to have a lot of different job titles of the people who deal with this stuff, because it's all very new, right? You mentioned the CIO, but there's also like, the head of alternative distribution, or there could be just the CEO has decided they're really passionate about this, and they like tasked a bunch of developers to do it kind of ad hoc, right? So it's all very new, and we're totally, we are the people who deal with the sort of uncertainty and the lack of standardization and sort of just the novelty of everything that's happening. And so we will only work with carriers that we prefer to work with carriers that can do quoting and binding and payment collection. That is not to say that we won't work with a carrier that only does instant quoting today, but we believe that for the health of the industry, every carrier really ought to be thinking about 5 things: instant quoting, instant binding, payment collection, policy document issuance, and servicing. And so if you are starting today and you're just starting to think about, we really should get on this API train, and what do we need to build, I would be thinking about those 5 endpoints at least. And really the carriers that get those to market quickly and effectively are going to be the ones that are the most widely distributed, especially through a unified API such as Briza.
Okay, perfect. So at this point, there's no way to join if I'm not API ready, basically, as a carrier.
There are ways that we could work with a carrier that has not completed an API, and yeah, I mean, we're open to it. Like, definitely, give us a call. But all carriers really ought to be thinking about API and sort of this type of distribution.
I agreed 100%, and I would be. I don't spend too much of my time chatting with CIOs. I'm usually chatting with business unit leaders, underwriting, actuarial, products, those kind of areas. But I would be shocked if I sat down with a CIO and he or she outright told me that they had no interest in getting API ready. Like that would be, I would be very surprised.
I mean, there are some carriers out there, they are only in one state, or they're sort of only in a small region, and they're very comfortable with where they're at. But if you really want to bring your company into this century, then an API is the way to go.
We're only 21 years into the century.
There's still time. There's still time.
Within insurance, it's still a new century. We're not entirely sure what it's going to be about. we're testing the waters, see if it sticks. Excellent, excellent. Okay, that's pretty cool. And how long has the company been around?
So Briza was conceived 5 years ago, but it was really only in the last three that we have that I think during a lot of that time it was thinking about it and it was talking to carriers and trying to find the first carrier that wanted to open up their API to us. And for us and for I think just one other company, that was Hiscox.
No surprise at all. Yeah.
No surprise there. Obviously, Hiscox is an industry leader when it comes to digital distribution and really just carrying the torch of why that is so important. And once Hiscox said yes, then that actually opened the floodgates of APIs, not only to us, but to other Insurtechs. And yeah, I mean, they have really blazed a trail that is admirable. And we think that, I mean, definitely more carriers should be thinking about, how to do some of the things that Hiscox has done.
Yeah, completely agree. It's almost amazing how it really, let's say when we were interviewing Insurtechs 2.5, 3 years ago, and the word API came up, they were always trying to paint a rosy picture, and then we would basically go like, so you're working with Hiscox and trying to work with everybody else, and they would be like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, totally. So I mean, yeah, and I think the timing is really important too. I've been talking to people for, I mean, at this point, I've had probably 500 conversations with various players in the industry, and one thing that I hear a lot, especially from a constituent that I will call sort of like the, a sort of like hustler type agency. They tend to punch above their weight. They're very they're very technology focused, and they're very forward thinking, typically, maybe 5 to 10 people. When I am so surprised how I talk to a lot of those people and they're like, I tried to invest in something like this like 5 years ago, or I tried to build something like this 5 years ago, but the APIs were not ready. The only thing they could really do was quote. And so what? You get a quote, you get competing quotes. It really does not do the thing we're trying to do, which is make purchasing commercial insurance as easy as buying something on Amazon. There is nothing like the consumer today, depending on what city you live in, you can have anything you can imagine delivered to your door like inside of an hour. And if you think about that in terms of the insurance buying experience, like what other product can you buy online that you might have to like call someone on the phone and then like give all these follow-up questions and then wait for an approval? And if it's like on a Friday afternoon, you won't hear anything back until like Tuesday morning. It's really the only way to actually make buying insurance like that is through a unified API. It's the only way. There are no options. And the the experience of growing the company, I think, was a lot about timing, and we were really lucky to we're about to announce our Series A raise, which is really cool. You heard it here first.
Awesome.
And so yeah, we've been growing really rapidly and doubling the size of the engineering team, I think, inside of this year.
Hold on, we're recording in January 2021, so I'm assuming that you haven't doubled this month. Okay. In the last 12 months.
Yes, in the last 12 months, we've doubled the size of the engineering team. Maybe more, I think. I mean, I think in January of last year, we were like 5 people. We're now 25 people. And our aim is to, maybe even double again this year. So.
Austin, Texas based, right?
Yeah, so our license is based in Texas, but we're a very international team now, and we now have people working across 8 time zones, I want to say.
Oh wow!
So but our head office is in Toronto, and we're very passionate about sort of Canadian tech and Toronto tech, but we have people all over the place now.
Where did I see Austin? I swore that I saw Austin.
We are Austin based.
Okay.
Our license is based here,
but then you mentioned Canada just before we started recording.
Yeah. So largest.
I'm like, where did I get Austin?
Yeah, the largest number of our team are in Toronto, and I would say one thing that's really interesting about tech in Canada is that we have a program called the Global Talent Stream. And it's a really easy way to, if you are a talented developer, to move to Canada with 2 weeks approval time. and
Holy.
you can, oh, it's great. It's great. You can bring your spouse and they get an open work permit, and you can bring your kids and they get an open study permit, so they can go to any high school or university in Canada. And the total time from the application approval to you landing in Canada is 4 weeks. And it's a very powerful tool. It's, anyone who's tried to do technical hiring in Toronto, there are lots of open roles. You try to hire people, and sometimes these roles will stay open for 6 months at a time. And that's why the government introduced the global talent stream. And, I don't want to get too into it. This is like a whole other conversation.
So I wasn't in tech, but I am a foreigner from Costa Rica originally, and the immigration process into the States is a dumpster fire, and this is
Yeah.
and this is before the last administration that made it even worse. Like, it's always been a dumpster fire. So that is incredible.
The Canadian government is very, it's always listening to small business, and one of the things that the business community has always been saying is there needs to be a way to get really talented developers into Canada. And the requirements are basically that you need 5 years of experience as a software developer or engineer, and you're eligible for this program. So it's called the Global Talent Stream. It's been very effective. Tens of thousands, maybe 100,000 people so far have come in on this visa. And it has a very clear path to citizenship as well. So it's super cool. And it's really, it's really helped Canada, I think, as a country, continue to be innovative around the world.
That makes perfect sense. I apologize. I have a siren outside my door. I live in downtown
problem.
Atlanta. I was trying to mute it, but that is crazy. So okay. So next time I get contacted by a developer in the developing world looking for an insurance job in the States, I'm going to say, forget about the States. Start looking at Canada.
I agree.
That is really good to hear.
It's a great place to live. It's a great place to raise a family. I have lived in Canada on and off for 16 years, and really, really proud to call it home.
Fantastic. Okay, awesome. Well, it's been super interesting, and thank you for that info about Canada too. Very much looking forward to see what else Briza does in the long term. Happy to have you or anybody else from the Briza team back on the podcast, in a few months or a year or whatever, to give an update. Thank you very much for your time. It's been very interesting.
All right. Well, thanks very much for having me.
Awesome.